اينشتاين بيقول التعليم مفهوش ملل، حط نفسك مكاني هتفقد الامل. ملينا المدرسه ونظام صب وكب، شرح طول الوقت عمل لنا دروب. يا استاذنا عقلي مش سبونج بوب، يشرب المعلومه وبعديها يكب. هنا في نوسكول طلعنا من الدروب، لعب مرح تفاعلات هتعجبك يا بوب.
نوسكول أكاديمي. Simply learn different.
Good morning dear students. النهاردة إن شاء الله هنكمل مع بعض آخر lesson في Unit 1. بنتكلم في lesson 3 برضو عن chemical reactions and chemical equations. طيب هنعرف إيه النهاردة؟ In today's lesson, I want you all to know what is chemical reaction. And we want to differentiate between chemical change and physical change. And finally, we want also to understand the importance of chemical reactions, and we will be discussing some chemical equations that need to be balanced. So we will learn how to balance chemical equations. What are the keywords for today? هنتكلم عن chemical reaction, chemical reaction, chemical equation, chemical equation, magnesium oxide, magnesium oxide. برافو عليكم. خلينا ندخل في الدرس بتاع النهارده، بس لازم خلينا فاكرين كويس قوي science is fun and you need all to enjoy learning science. Welcome back to today's lesson and let's get started. في الأول عايزاكم تسألوا نفسكم what is chemical reaction and do you think it's really important? And why chemical equation need to be balanced? دي الأسئلة اللي إن شاء الله هنجاوب عليها في الدرس النهاردة. بس زي ما احنا متعودين pause the video وفكروا في السؤال ده. Write your answer in your science notebook وهنعرف الإجابة إن شاء الله في الحصة النهاردة. Let's talk first about the difference between chemical change and physical change. In chemical change there's only change in the form of the matter. يعني there's no any chemical change. But in chemical change there is a chemical reaction and as a result a new substance is formed with completely new properties. طيب خلينا ناخد example عن physical change and another example about chemical change. لو احنا عندنا a cube of ice, it's in a solid state. But after certain time, due to heat, the ice will melt and the state will change from solid to liquid. Here it's only a change in the form or in the state of matter, but it is still water. So this is an example of physical change. طيب ايه chemical change? Chemical change is when you start to burn wood. لما نجيب خشب ونبدأ ان احنا نحرق الخشب, actually the wood will completely change. The wood will enter in chemical reactions with the oxygen in the air and as a result carbon dioxide will be released and a residue of ash will be formed. So here there is a change in the form. And also a chemical change occurs due to chemical reaction. Let's take another example about physical and chemical change. When you bring a piece of wood and you start to hammer it, what happens is that the large piece of wood changes to small pieces. يعني في change in the form of the matter. But it is still a wood. That's why it's only physical change. But during chemical change, as we said, it is the burning of food and its complete change in the form of the matter. And here we can say that a chemical reaction takes place. خلينا نفهم أكتر يعني إيه chemical reaction. Chemical reaction is when we have two reactants. For example, reactant A and reactant B. Both react together to form AB, which is a new substance. That's why we say that chemical reaction is the formation of new substance with completely new properties. So let's take another example of chemical reaction. اتكلمنا قبل كده عن table salt, which is sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is the chemical name of salt, الملح. طيب عبارة عن إيه؟ عبارة عن two reactants, which is sodium and chlorine, which reacts together to form a new product, which is sodium chloride. It's a new substance with new properties. يبقى أنا عندي الصوديوم which is A reacts with chlorine which is B to form AB or sodium chloride. ودايما خلينا فاكرين إن A and B is the reactant and AB form it is the product formed. Let's take another example to understand more what is chemical reaction. For example, water. إحنا كلنا عارفين إن the chemical name for water is H2O. So it is formed of the reactants, which are 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atoms. يبقى دول reactants, they react together during chemical reaction to form a new product, which is H2O, and it is the water molecule. خلينا بقى نجاوب على السؤال اللي احنا سألناه في أول الحصة. Why, after certain amount of time, iron changes its color? The answer is that the chemical change that happens in iron is due to chemical reaction. So I have 2 reactants here. Iron will react with oxygen, ودول الreactants بتوعي, that will react together to form a new product called iron oxide or ferric oxide. Ferric oxide هو اللي بيكون ليه اللون البراون that forms the rust in iron. So again here, يبقى أنا عندي iron, which is Fe, reacts with 2 oxygen atoms to form ferric oxide. طيب طبعا لو جينا بصينا في الإيكويشن هنلاقي إن numbers of iron and oxygen in the reactants are not the same as the product. وده اللي احنا إن شاء الله هنتعلمه في آخر الحصة النهاردة, how to balance a chemical equation, how the number of atoms in the reactants will be equal to the number of atoms in the product. دلوقتي هنتكلم شوية عن ال importance of chemical reaction. Chemical reaction is really important in our lives, in everyday life. طيب, chemical reaction is important for heat and electric energy resources. It's also used in modern industries for the formation of many products. For example, fuel, car batteries, plastics, medicines. So it is involved in all products. One of the very important examples in chemical reaction is the photosynthesis by plants. In order for the plants to get food and energy, they need to make photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, chemical reactions happens, and as a result, glucose is formed, and it is the major source of energy and food for the plants. Also, example اتكلمنا عليه when burning wood. Also, when the bananas and apples are left for some time, they will react with the oxygen in the air, and that will result in changing of the color of the fruit. Now it's time to scan the QR code, watch this video about chemical reactions in our daily life, and come back علشان نكمل بقية الدرس مع بعض النهاردة. دلوقتي عن ال chemical reactions that happens in magnesium ribbon. Using a test tube holder, هنمسك small piece of magnesium ribbon, and we will start to burn it. Okay, before speaking about magnesium and what will happen when it enters a chemical reaction, خلينا نفتكر مع بعض what happens to the 2 oxygen atoms. اتكلمنا قبل كده in order to be stable, they need to form double covalent bonds. طيب, أول حاجة هتحصل إن during these chemical reactions, during burning or heat energy, the 2 covalent bonds هيتكسروا, and as a result, the 2 oxygen atoms will return back to be unstable. اللي هيحصل إن الأكسجين will go and react with the magnesium atom, and they will form magnesium oxide. طيب, يبقى دلوقتي المغنيسيوم will react with the atmospheric oxygen, and those two are called the reactants, to form a new substance which is called the product, and it's called magnesium oxide. يبقى كده المغنيسيوم ribbon during chemical reactions, when it reacts with the oxygen in the atmosphere, magnesium oxide is formed, which is in a powder form. يبقى علشان نعمل a final recap, نبقى عارفين كويس جدا ان المغنيسيوم and oxygen, they are called reactants, and magnesium oxide is called the product. وكمان لو لاحظنا هنلاقي ان the number of magnesium and oxygen in the reactants are not the same as the products. وده كمان اللي هنعرفه النهاردة إن شاء الله لما نتعلم إزاي to balance a chemical equation. Now, it is quiz time. I want you all to scan the QR code, solve the quiz, and come back to complete today's lesson. يبقى علشان نتكلم عن الchemical reactions لازم نعرف definition مهم جدا. Chemical reaction, it's the process that involves the breakdown of existing bonds in the reactant to form a new bonds in the product. وده بالظبط اللي احنا عملناه في المغنيسيوم and oxygen when they react to form magnesium oxide. دلوقتي هنتكلم عن الchemical equations. أنا عارفة إن انتوا تعبتوا معايا شوية بس خلاص ده آخر جزء في الدرس النهاردة. طيب يعني إيه chemical equation الأول؟ Chemical equation it's a set of atoms and chemical formula. They react together to form a reactant and a product. In a chemical reaction, and as a result, a product is formed which is a new substance with completely new properties. يبقى أنا دلوقتي in chemical equation I represent the reactant and the product and also the chemical condition. يعني if I need to apply heat كل ده بيبقى واضح عندي في chemical equation. مهم جدا نبقى عارفين مع بعض إن chemical equation need to be balanced. طيب يعني إيه balanced؟ يعني the number of atoms in the reactant side must be equal to the number of atoms in the product side. Yeah, for example, لو أنا بتكلم عن ال H2O, so it's hydrogen that reacts with oxygen, يبقى أنا عندي two reactants to form a product which is H2O. طيب خلينا نعد ال number of atoms. Actually, the product بيكون formed of two H2O molecules. So it's 2H2O. يبقى أنا كده عندي 4 hydrogens. يبقى لازم كمان يكون عندي 4 hydrogens in the reactant side. That's why هنيجي جنب ال H2 اللي في reactant ونحط another 2. يبقى كده لو جينا نشوف عدد ال hydrogen atoms هنلاقي إن أنا عندي 4 in the reactant side and 4 hydrogens in the product side. طيب خلينا نشوف عدد الأكسجين عندي في الchemical equation. احنا لو فاكرين في البرودكت عندنا 2H2O يبقى ال 2 اللي في الأول خالص is also for the oxygen. يبقى أنا عندي 2 oxygens in the product side. يبقى كمان لازم يكون عندي 2 oxygens in the reactant side. يبقى كده الإيكويشن اللي عندي it's a balanced chemical equation. طيب خلينا نرجع للchemical equation اللي احنا اتكلمنا عليها من شوية اللي كانت مغنيسيوم مع الأكسجين to form a product of magnesium oxide. So لو جينا نشوف the number of atoms of magnesium and oxygen atoms in the reactant side not equal to the number of atoms in the product side. يعني أنا عندي هنا 2 oxygens and in the product only 1 oxygen. So how can we balance this chemical equation? بأول حاجة محتاجين نعملها إن ال product side needs to have 2 oxygens. So we will add 2 before magnesium oxide. يبقى كده كمان بقى عندي 2 magnesiums. يبقى أنا كده محتاجة to add 2 in magnesium in the reactant side. يبقى في الآخر عندي 2 magnesium and 2 oxygen atoms in the reactant side and 2 magnesium and 2 oxygen atoms in the product side. So we say that magnesium oxide chemical equation is balanced. خلينا نشوف ال chemical equation للiron when it reacts with oxygen to form iron oxide. وده الexample of rusting which is a chemical change اللي اتكلمنا عليه في الأول. بس قلنا ال equation wasn't balanced. لازم ال number of iron and oxygen in the reactant side to be equal to the number of iron and oxygen in the product side. طيب خلينا نتكلم عن example تاني. احنا عارفين كلنا الكربون dioxide gas. Carbon dioxide is formed due to the reaction between carbon and oxygen. 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. يبقى دول عندي reactants. برافو عليكم. طيب ايه البرودكت؟ البرودكت carbon dioxide. Do you think the chemical equation is balanced? برافو عليكم. يبقى لما نيجي نعد the number of atoms In the reactant side, oxygen we have 2 and carbon we have 1. And also the product, carbon dioxide, it is formed of 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. So we say that carbon dioxide chemical equation is balanced. Now it's quiz time. I need you all to scan the QR code. حلوا لي الكويز ده سهل جدا وتعالوا علشان نكمل last part in today's lesson. I know you're all tired بس خلاص يلا خلينا نركز في آخر part عندنا النهاردة. هنتكلم دلوقتي عن law اسمه law of constant ratio. طيب يعني إيه؟ أهم حاجة نعرف إن لازم the total mass of the reactant must be equal to the total mass of the product. نتكلم عن example علشان نفهم أكتر يعني إيه law of constant ratio. If I have 100 grams of mercuric oxide يبقى أنا كمان the reactants لازم يكونوا كمان 100 grams. So the amount of grams in mercury and the amount of grams in oxygen كمان السم بتاعهم will be 100 grams. طيب علشان نفهم أكتر مع بعض law of constant ratio خلينا نحل بعض الإكزامبلز مع بعض. خلينا نشوف أول مسألة يلا بينا. لو بيقول لي the amount of أو the chemical mass المسألة بتقول لي given that the atomic mass of magnesium is 24 grams and oxygen 16 grams. So calculate the total grams of the reactant and the total grams of the product. أول حاجة خلينا نكتب الكيميكال equation وما ننساش must be balanced. طيب أنا عارفة إن المغنيسيوم will react with oxygen to form magnesium oxide. اتكلمنا وقلنا إن ال product actually is 2 magnesium oxide. So I need to add 2 in the magnesium in the reactant side. يبقى أنا كده عندي 2 magnesium atoms will react with 2 oxygen atoms to form 2 magnesium oxide in the product side. يبقى أنا أول حاجة خالص بكتب الكيميكال equation balance the chemical equation وتالت حاجة أبدأ أحسب الجرامز and then we will calculate the grams in the product side. طيب أنا عندي 2 magnesium in the reactant side so it's 2 multiplied by 24. The answer is 48 grams. So I have 2 atoms of oxygen in the reactant side. So it's 2 multiplied by 16 and it's equal to 32 grams. So 48 plus 32 gives 80 grams in the reactant side. طيب خلينا كمان نحسب amount in grams in the product side. أنا عندي 2 magnesium oxide. So it's 2 multiplied by 16 plus 24. كمان answer will be 80 grams. يبقى كده according to the law of constant ratio, the amount in grams in the reactant side is equal to the amount in grams in the product side. دايما خلينا فاكرين لما نتكلم عن law of constant ratio أكن عندي ميزان ولما أحط grams of the reactant must be equal to the grams in the product side. So they must be equal. وفعلا في المسألة لقينا ان الاثنين 80 grams. طيب ايه رأيكم نحل مسألة تانية علشان الموضوع يثبت اكتر. بس عايزاكم توقفوا الفيديو try to solve the question لوحدكم وبعد كده تعالوا علشان نعرف الإجابة مع بعض. برافو عليكم، شكرا ان انتوا حليتوا المسألة. خلينا بقى نتعلم ازاي نعملها مع بعض. المسألة بتقول ان انا عندي 1 carbon atom reacts with 2 oxygen atoms دول reactants بتوعي to form a product of carbon dioxide. يبقى أول حاجة كتبنا الchemical equation. تاني حاجة لازم نتأكد هل الchemical equation is balanced or no. طيب أنا فعلا لما جيت كتبتها لقيت إن أنا عندي 1 carbon and 2 oxygen atoms in the reactant side. What about the product? كمان في 1 oxygen and 2 oxygen atoms. يبقى خلاص تاني حاجة اتأكدت منها إن فعلا the chemical equation is balanced. خلينا تالت حاجة calculate the grams in the reactant side and then we will calculate the grams in the product side. خلينا نشوف الأول ال reactant side. 1 carbon is equal to 12 grams and 2 multiplied by 16, it's also equal to 32 grams. So the total in grams is 44 grams in the reactant side. تعالوا بقى نحسب ال amount in grams in the product side. Carbon dioxide, so it's only 1 carbon, so it's 12 plus 2 multiplied by 16 because we have 2 oxygen atoms. And it's also equal 44 grams. يبقى كده I'm sure that the amount in grams in the reactant side is equal to the amount in grams in product side. So they are equal. Now it's time for the last quiz in today's lesson. Now it's the last quiz in today's lesson. عايزاكم تعملوا scanning لل QR code, solve the quiz, وتعالوا علشان نتكلم عن المايند ماب آخر حاجة عندنا in today's lesson. Thank you so much for solving the quiz. خلينا نتكلم عن آخر حاجة عندنا في الدرس النهاردة mind map. وخلينا فاكرين إن المايند ماب بتسهل علينا كل اللي إحنا اتكلمنا عليه في الدرس النهاردة. طيب اتكلمنا أول حاجة عن chemical reaction. واتفقنا إن chemical reaction is represented by a chemical equation. واتكلمنا إن chemical equation must be balanced. Example, زي carbon when it reacts with oxygen it will form carbon dioxide. واتكلمنا كمان إن أنا عندي reactant side and product side. وكمان اتكلمنا عن law of constant ratio. وعرفنا إن the amount in grams of the reactant must be equal to the amount of grams in the reactant side. وكمان اتكلمنا عن law of constant ratio وعرفنا إن the amount in grams of the reactant is equal to the amount of grams in the product side. They must be equal. Now you can all rest. خلاص خلصنا الدرس. آخر حاجة homework for today's lesson. Watch the video and write all your questions. Don't forget to solve the 5 MCQ quiz. And finally, solve all the QR codes and watch the videos. طيب هنتكلم عن إيه إن شاء الله في الدرس اللي جاي؟ هنتكلم عن ال types of chemical reactions. وكمان هنتكلم عن the importance of chemical reactions in our life. Bye bye and see you next time إن شاء الله. Bye bye.
نتمنى من كل قلبنا الحصة تكون عجبتك، وبنقول لك ما تنساش تحل الكويز اللي في المصادر، وكمان تقيم الحصة تحت في التعليقات. منتظرينك في اللايف في حفظ الله.